chosen ones. They regret losing access to you. Don't let them come back. There comes a moment in every chosen one's life when you finally understand why certain people were removed from your path. You weren't being punished. You were being protected. You weren't abandoned. You were elevated. And now the very people who took your presence for granted are waking up to a truth they never imagined. Losing access to you was the biggest mistake they ever made. They thought you would always be available. They thought you would always forgive, always show up, always pour into them, even when they gave you nothing in return. They mistook your kindness for weakness, your loyalty for blindness, your love for dependency. But what they didn't know was that God was quietly strengthening your spirit, preparing you for a moment like this, a moment where you rise without them. Now they look back and see exactly who you were, the one who carried light they couldn't understand, the one who brought peace they couldn't appreciate, the one who offered loyalty they didn't deserve. They didn't just lose you. They lost the covering, the clarity, the favor, the elevation that followed you wherever you went. And as they try to circle back, hoping you'll open the door again, you must remember one thing. Not everyone deserves a second entrance into the life God rebuilt for you. What you walked away from no longer matches the version of you that's emerging. This is your season of power, your season of boundaries, your season of becoming untouchable. Stay with me as we dive in with these 10 points. 1. They didn't lose you. They lost the door to their breakthrough. What most people never realized is that your presence in their life wasn't accidental. It was strategic. You weren't just someone they met along the way. You were a divinely positioned doorway, a connection meant to elevate, restore, heal, and transform. You carried a type of energy that aligned them with opportunities they didn't even have the spiritual eyes to recognize. When they crossed paths with you, heaven opened something on their behalf. Something rare, something powerful, something they were not prepared to honor. They didn't lose a person. No, they lost a portal to clarity, a portal to favor, a portal to divine alignment. You were the light that illuminated their next step. You were the calm that shielded them from the chaos they never told you about. You were the one who held spiritual ground for them in silence, praying behind their back while they disrespected you to your face. And the saddest part? They thought your presence was ordinary because you made divine help look effortless. But God saw everything. He saw how they mishandled what they begged him for. He saw how they wasted the blessing they weren't mature enough to keep. He saw how they grew comfortable with the access you gave, access they never earned. So when the disconnection happened, whether by betrayal, distance, disrespect, or divine intervention, it wasn't just a breakup or a fallout. It was a closing of the portal, a heavenly seal, a spiritual lock. The opportunity that once flowed freely through you is now removed from them completely, and the absence they feel is not just emotional, it's spiritual. Now they finally understand. You were not random. You were not replaceable. You were not temporary. You were the turning point they didn't turn toward. You were the breakthrough they prayed for, and then mishandled. And now, as regret hits them harder each day, they are forced to accept a truth they wish they learned sooner. Some doors never open twice. Chapter 1. Your presence was the protection they didn't know they needed. There are people who never understood that your presence in their life was more than companionship. It was covering. You carried a shield they benefited from without ever acknowledging it. You stood between them and battles they had no idea were coming. Your spirit carried a quiet authority, a protection that moved things out of their path before they even saw the danger. But because you never bragged about what you prevented, they assumed nothing was happening at all. They didn't know that while they laughed at you, you were fighting for them in silence. They didn't know that while they gossiped about you, you were praying that harm wouldn't touch them. They didn't know that while they treated you casually, heaven treated you like a guardian assigned to their destiny. Your kindness was more powerful than they realized. Your loyalty was more spiritual than they understood. When they walked recklessly, your presence rerouted consequences. When they attracted chaos, your energy absorbed it. When they stepped into situations that should have destroyed them, your covering intercepted what was meant to break them. But people only value protection when it's gone. Now that you're no longer around, the storms you used to block are finally reaching them. The emotional battles, the spiritual warfare, the consequences they avoided because you stood in the gap. Suddenly, life feels heavier, harder, more chaotic, and they can't explain why everything began to fall apart right after you left. Deep down, they know why. You were the anchor that stabilized their drifting. You were the peace in their confusion. You were the shield they mistook for coincidence. And now, as they feel the weight of their own choices and the storms they once escaped, regret begins to whisper truth into their spirit. They didn't just lose you. They lost the protection that was keeping them afloat. What they misjudged, they now miss what they mocked. 1. They thought you were replaceable until life proved you were rare. Some people only understand your value after life teaches them the lesson you were too humble to explain. When they were connected to you, they treated you like you were ordinary, like someone just like you could be found on any street, in any room, in any conversation. They assumed that loyalty like yours grew on trees, that your patience had no expiration date, and that your love would always be waiting for them no matter how many times they disrespected it. They mistook your stability for simplicity. They mistook your silence for weakness. They mistook your heart for something cheap. So they gambled. They played with what was sacred. They traded something priceless for distractions with no weight, no depth, no soul. They traded diamonds for dust. And dust always looks appealing, for a moment. It glitters just enough to mimic worth, but when life blows even slightly, it scatters. It blinds. It fills the eyes with regret so heavy that they struggle to see the truth they once ignored. You were irreplaceable. Now they are sitting with the emptiness their choices created. They look for you in others and discover only shadows. They attempt to recreate the comfort you brought and end up with counterfeit connections that drain instead of build. Every conversation reminds them of the authenticity they lost. Every relationship exposes the loyalty they failed to honor. Every disappointment reflects the stability you always offered, but they never appreciated. Life is now teaching them what pride prevented them from seeing. You weren't just rare. You were one of one. You weren't just good. You were the blessing they didn't protect. You weren't just present. You were the presence they needed. And as the dust settles and reality becomes clear, they finally understand the cost of their choices. They didn't just lose someone special. They lost the only version of you that will ever exist. 1. Your departure exposed. Every false intention. Your absence did something your presence never could. It revealed the truth. When you were around, their masks stayed glued to their faces. Your light was so bright it softened their shadows. Your loyalty so steady it hid their instability. Your compassion so pure it disguised their selfishness. But the moment you walked away, the facade they carefully built began to crumble. Because your presence had been the glue holding everything together. The smiles they gave you, rehearsed. The compliments, convenient. The loyalty, conditional. They were comfortable as long as they had access to your energy, your support, your resources, your heart. But when you finally said enough, when you stopped explaining, stopped defending, stopped reaching, something powerful happened. The real them surfaced. Your departure stripped away the excuses. It forced their true motives into the open. It exposed the intentions they tried to hide behind charm, manipulation, and selective affection. Suddenly all the things you overlooked began to make sense. The inconsistencies, the half-truths, the sudden mood shifts, the strange tension you felt but couldn't name. You realize now that it wasn't just you. It was their spirit. 1. They are now battling the karma. You shielded them. From when you were in their life, they didn't understand the power of the covering you carried. You weren't loud about it. You weren't boastful. You didn't announce it. But you were their buffer, their shield, their invisible armor. You stood between them and the consequences of their own actions, absorbing storms they created and calming chaos they attracted. You softened blows they didn't even know were coming. And because life stayed smooth around you, they assumed the peace was natural. They had no idea you were the reason the storm clouds never broke fully open. Your presence created spiritual order where they had disorder. Your energy stabilized their reckless habits. Your prayers intercepted karma. Every time they sowed negativity, every time they acted from ego, every time they mistreated people or made impulsive choices, the consequences were delayed, minimized, or redirected. 1. They missed the energy that made them feel alive. There are people who never realized that being connected to you was the closest they ever came to feeling truly alive. Not because you entertained them, not because you impressed them, but because your spirit carried a fire that awakened something dormant inside them. You were the spark their soul didn't know it needed. You were the battery that recharged their fading purpose. You were the light that made their dark seasons feel survivable. Your energy wasn't normal. It was healing. It was motivating. It was magnetic in a way they couldn't describe but deeply felt. You breathed life into places inside them that had been numb for years. You encouraged dreams they buried. You ignited hope they forgot existed. You mirrored back a version of themselves they wished they could become. When they were around you, they felt capable, seen, alive, valued, important. And they mistook that feeling for something they created, not something you carried. They didn't know your presence was the engine behind their inspiration. So they drained it. They took without giving. They soaked up your fire but never tended to their own flame. They enjoyed the warmth while contributing no wood to the fire pit. And now that you're gone, the cold has exposed everything. The thrill they felt around you has vanished. The motivation they had suddenly faded. The joy you sparked has turned into emotional. 1. You were their silent teacher. You were more than a presence in their life. You were a teacher, even though you never stood in front of a classroom, never lectured, never demanded recognition. You taught through example, not instruction. Through action, not words. Through consistency, not performance. Everything about you carried a lesson they didn't understand until you were no longer there to demonstrate it. You taught them loyalty, not by talking about it, but by showing up even when they didn't deserve it. You kept your word in a world full of broken promises. You stood by them in moments when everyone else walked away. Your loyalty was a mirror that exposed their inconsistency, but they didn't look at the reflection until it was too late. You taught them love, not the shallow kind based on convenience or ego, but the rare kind rooted in patience, empathy, and truth. You loved even when it hurt. You cared even when they made it difficult. You extended grace even when they threw your kindness back in your face. Only now do they realize how sacred that kind of love was. You taught them stability, not because life was easy, but because you remained grounded, even when everything around you felt unstable. You were their calm in chaos, their balance, their emotional anchor. They didn't appreciate that stability because they were used to people who were inconsistent, reactive, and temporary. And now, they are learning the one lesson they never expected: consequences. The consequence of taking loyalty for granted is losing someone who never betrayed them. The consequence of rejecting love is facing emptiness they aren't equipped to fill. The consequence of ignoring stability is drowning in their own instability. Life has become the teacher now, and its lessons are far harsher than yours ever were. What you tried to teach gently, life is now teaching brutally. They finally understand the truth. You weren't just someone in their story. You were the wisdom they weren't mature enough to value. 1. Their regret is a sign of your growth. Regret is not just an emotion. It's a revelation. And the regret they feel now is not random, accidental, or sudden. It is the natural consequence of your elevation. When God begins to lift you, the very people who once dismissed you suddenly gain clarity. Your glow exposes what they failed to value. Your progress highlights what they mishandled. Your transformation reveals the treasure they overlooked. People don't regret losing what has no value. They regret losing what they weren't wise enough to keep. When they had access to you, they didn't see the potential God planted in you. They didn't recognize the seeds of growth, greatness, or spiritual authority you carried. They thought you would remain the same, quiet, forgiving, available, predictable. They thought your loyalty meant you'd never leave. Your love meant you'd never evolve. Your humility meant you'd never rise. But you did rise. God elevated you in silence. He expanded your capacity. He strengthened your spirit. He upgraded your discernment. And by the time they noticed, it was already too late. Now they watch from a distance as you walk into opportunities they never imagined. They see you confident, focused, self-aware, glowing in a way that wasn't visible before. And suddenly, the access they once took for granted feels like the greatest privilege they ever wasted. Their regret is not about missing the old you. It's about realizing the new you no longer needs them. Your growth exposed the limitations of their character. Your healing highlighted the wounds they never addressed. Your elevation revealed their stagnation. And now the regret they carry is a mirror reflecting what they lost when they lost you. But here's the truth you must hold on to. Their regret is not your responsibility. It is confirmation. Confirmation that you were valuable. Confirmation that God's hand is on your life. Confirmation that your departure was divine. Regret is their burden. Growth is your blessing. 1. Your comeback season doesn't include old characters. There comes a moment in every chosen one's journey when God turns the page, and suddenly your life becomes a story that no longer fits the characters from previous chapters. You are stepping into a new season, a season written specifically for your elevation, your purpose, your expansion. And in this chapter, the old energies, old patterns, and old relationships simply cannot follow you. Your comeback isn't just a return, it's a rebirth. You are not who you were when they knew you. You've healed too deeply, grown too far, awakened too much. The version of you they once had access to no longer exists. God has refined you, reshaped you, and repositioned you. You've evolved into someone who no longer tolerates disrespect, confusion, or half-hearted loyalty. That's why the old characters feel uncomfortable around you now. Your growth exposes their stagnation. Your purpose makes their intentions look hollow. Your elevation aggravates the insecurities they tried to hide. They can sense the shift in your spirit even before you step fully into your breakthrough. But here's the truth. New blessings require new boundaries. New levels require new circles. New doors require a new identity. Old energies cannot enter a door God designed exclusively for you. Not everyone who walked with you is meant to rise with you. Not everyone who clapped for you was truly cheering. Not everyone who stayed connected had pure motives. Some people were lessons, not lifetimes. Some were stepping stones, not destinations. Some were temporary companions to get you to the place where you finally choose yourself. Your comeback season is divine. It's strategic. It's sacred. And God is removing anyone who would contaminate what He's building in you. You are stepping into a chapter that requires a cleaner heart, a sharper mind, a bolder spirit, and a lighter circle. This is your time to rise without apology, ascend without guilt, and walk through doors designed for you and only you. The old chapter is closed. The new one has begun, and this time, you're unstoppable. 1. Letting them back would dim the light. You worked so hard to ignite. You endured storms. You survived seasons that tried to break you. You walked through fire that tested every ounce of your faith, courage, and patience. And through it all, you emerged stronger, wiser, and brighter than ever before. The light you carry now is not something that can be dimmed by the very people who once ignored, betrayed, or undervalued it. Letting them back would be like opening a window to let the storm inside your sanctuary. The very storm you fought so hard to leave behind. You didn't rise from ashes to return to smoke. You didn't climb out of darkness only to invite the shadows back into your glow. You survived because God had a vision for you that required preservation, elevation, and protection from energies that were never meant to remain in your space. Your light is sacred. Your fire is intentional. Your brilliance is a testimony to resilience, divine favor, and self-worth. The people who once drained you, disrespected you, or underestimated you are now irrelevant to the trajectory of your destiny. Their return would not bring closure, it would bring compromise. It would dim the radiance you worked tirelessly to ignite, and it would threaten the peace, focus, and power that now define your life. Your future is too bright for old darkness, too valuable for those who fail to recognize your worth, too sacred for anyone who doesn't match the frequency of your growth. This is why you must stand firm. Do not reopen doors to what already proved unworthy of your presence. Your light is your weapon, your shield, and your signature. You fought to protect it, to nurture it, and to let it shine for the life God planned for you. Let no one steal it back under the guise of regret or apology. You didn't survive the storms for nothing. You survived to shine, brighter, higher, and freer than ever before. Your brilliance belongs to you. Guard it, protect it, keep it sacred. Conclusion. The truth is, chosen one, your journey has never been about pleasing everyone, proving your worth to the unworthy, or revisiting doors that were closed for a reason. Every trial, every betrayal, every storm you survived was a divine preparation, a forging of character, a sharpening of purpose, and a deepening of your light. They will regret losing access to you because they glimpsed your value too late. They will feel the emptiness you once filled, the protection you once carried, the energy you once radiated. And in their regret, they will learn what you already know. Some people are never meant to walk beside you again. You were never ordinary. You were a force, a portal, a blessing, and a teacher. You were the spark that awakened souls, the calm that shielded storms, and the presence that illuminated truth. And now, your season has shifted. Your comeback is not a return to old patterns or familiar shadows. It is a rise into the extraordinary life that only you, with your fire, your faith, and your purpose, can inhabit. Let their absence remind you of your value. Let their regret affirm your growth. Let your light continue to shine, undimmed, unstoppable, and unapologetic. You are no longer available for what drains, diminishes, or distracts from your destiny. Your future belongs to the vision God has crafted for you, a vision too bright, too sacred, and too powerful to be compromised. Rise, chosen one, stand firm, shine without hesitation. They may regret losing you, but you will never regret protecting your light.